afternoon, children. Now, just a very beautiful thought. Hello. Good afternoon, children. A beautiful thought. Prayer is talking to the universe, and meditation is listening to it. Now, as we just go ahead with this thought, just I would like all of you to sit straight, close your eyes, and just put your feet on the ground. Right. Now, as you close your eyes, take this 1 minute just to connect with your breath. Just feel yourself breathing in and feel yourself breathing out without trying to manipulate your breathing pattern. Now, relax your jaw, relax your shoulders. Notice how different your one breath is from the next, and it is the same with life also. In life, one day, one moment is different from the next, ever changing, ever evolving. What is going through your mind now, let it slip away. Forget about all the worries, tensions that you are having in your mind. And just for this moment, come back to harmony. As you do the same, you feel safe, you are accepted, you are forgiven, and you are loved. So, with this beautiful thought and the meditation, I hope all of you are energized with the positive energy. And let us now start the class with this positive energy. As the instructions goes, first of all, children, you need to turn off your audio and video the moment you join the session. Please make sure each one of you check them out. Students, you are supposed to rename yourself as soon as you join the session. See, it becomes very difficult when we um, take your attendance. Okay. So in that case, you'll be marked absent if you have entered your wrong name or some order is different. So please mention your name, admission number, class, and section. That should be the order. And if there is any query related to the class, please send it on my email ID, which is mentioned down below, ashishavasan at lancesconvent.net. And last, you need to maintain the decorum and discipline of the virtual class. Please don't disturb the class. I hope all of you will cooperate and expect that you people will listen to all the topics we are discussing. Thank you all. So now, children, in the previous class, I just told you to analyze this table. Okay. Now, very fast, I'm just moving ahead with this table. Now, in this table, this is basically the table which shows the indicator of human capital formation, right? Education, that is, and health, right? What is the statistics we have? Now, first, if I say that this is real per capita income, this can also be taken as economic growth indicator, right? And if we observe the values, we see that right from the year 1951 and the year 2014 and 15, the values are increasing. That is, the real per capita income is increasing. And we know that As such, previously we studied that it is really very difficult to establish the cause and effect relationship between the two indicators, that is human capital and economic growth. But just to prove the cause and effect relationship, we need to refer to this table, right? Now, here, as I'm saying, that real per capita income, which is measured in terms of economic growth. And this we see if we observe these figures are increasing every year, right? So that means there is economic growth taking place in the country. Next, we talk about the crude death rate. That is simply, if we put it, it is the death rate. Now, if we look into the figures, 1951, then 81, then so on, the values are falling, right? Now, when the values of death rate are falling, what basically this conveys to us? This conveys that our health sector, right, has shown improvement, because if we have lesser death rate, that means there is improvement in medical facilities. And when there is improvement in medical facilities, it automatically conveys that there is improvement in the health sector, that is health sector has expanded. And the next we have infant mortality rate, right? Infant mortality rate, as I conveyed you earlier, that it is the rate or the number of children who are dying before reaching the age of 1 year per thousand live births. If 1000 children are born in a particular year, out of those 1000 children, how many children do not even survive till the age of 1 year? So that will be called as the infant mortality rate, right? Now, if we observe these figures, right? So over the passage of time, right? If we see the if we see the time, different time zones, and if we see that, we observe that over the period of time, even infant mortality rate has also fallen down, right? Then let's talk about the life expectancy. Now, life expectancy, as we all know, the number of years a person is expected to live on an average, right? If child is born, then we expect that if everything goes normal, situation remains normal, then this child is expected to live for so many years, right? So that is on an average, we are saying, not the exact, right? Now, life expectancy of males, it has also risen to 67 years, right, for males, and it is 70 years for females, right? So now, when we just look into all these figures, right, death rate, mortality rate, and the life expectancy, these four columns together depict the status of health, right? And health, as we see that all these are favorable, so this means that there is expansion in the health sector, right? And next component of human capital is the education, and education is measured through literacy rate, right? So if we observe the literacy rate, we see that even the literacy rate has increased, right? 76 presently, if 2014 and 15, if I talk about, 76% of the population is educated, right? Now, if you remember, when we covered the chapter Indian economy on the eve of independence, so there we studied that only 16% of our population was educated, and out of this total 16%, only 7% females were literate. I hope you remember these figures, right? So just see, 1951, we have around 16.67% of the population being literate. So if we compare it with 2014 and 15 figures, what we observe is that during this time, even the literacy rate has increased. Okay. So we always expect that higher the literacy rate, better it is for the economy, right? So now, if by analyzing this data, what we observe is that this is economic growth. These four columns gives you the status of health, and this gives you the status of education. So health and education together makes human capital. So if we see that economic growth is increasing, it's taking place, and along with that, human capital is also increasing, right? So this table proves that there is a very strong relation between human capital and economic growth, right? That means growth in say in one sector will lead to the growth in the other sector, right? Now, just to move on with the fresh topic, I have with me the next topic as the state of human capital formation. See, now what I am going to discuss all with you, I would like each one of you to write down each and every point which I'll be discussing, because this particular topic needs a lot of explanation. So, children, be active, right? I'll be going a bit slow, don't worry, right? So, but the thing is, you need to note down certain points which have some different explanation. Okay, so first is the state of human capital formation. Now, we all know that human capital formation is the outcome of five sources we have studied. Now, what are those five sources? Yes, I know by now you people know it by heart, right? The five sources are expenditure on education, expenditure on health, migration, then information, right? And then we have education on, yes, please, yes, health, education, migration, information, and yes, you are correct. Okay, so fifth one is education on information technology. Okay, so now when these are the five sources, right? And out of all these five sources, we know that education and health play a very important role in measuring human capital formation, right? Now, furthermore, we know that ours is a federal country, right? Federal country with union government working at the top, and below union government we have various state governments, and below the state governments we have the local governments. Okay, so this is the federal system of our economy. Three tier system, it is also called as three tier system, right? First, on top, union government, also called as central government. Okay, see, whenever we will use the word union, we will be also meaning it also means that we are in place of the word center, we are using the word union. Okay, so we have a three tier system in our country. First, central government. Below that works the state governments. Various state, every state has its own government. So all these state governments are working under the union government, and below these state governments we have local governments, which are further being divided into two parts. One we have is the municipality, right, which further consists of various organizations or organs like municipal corporation, municipal council, nagar panchayat, and then along with municipality we have panchayat at district level, intermediate panchayat, and village panchayat. See, this system to get into the details of the system is not very important. What you need to know is why we are a federal country, or what is the three tier system, what does all it includes. Okay, union, state, local. Under local, we have municipal corporation, municipal council, and even if you take up village panchayat with that, the structure will be complete, right? So now when we say that all these organization, the three tiers of the government are incurring expenditure both on education as well as health, right? And by all these three tiers of the government, right, we have under these three system organizations, union, state, and local, we have the private sector as well as the government sector working in the field of education and health. Like we have private hospitals, along with that we have government hospitals also, which are providing these health facilities, health services to the people. With government, we have the in schools, if we talk about, similarly we have government schools as well as we have the private schools. So that means we in our economy, the government and the private sector, both of these sectors are providing education and health services to the people, right? Now when we have both private and government institutions, right, so these institutions are providing services, but it is necessary for the government to interfere in the working of these two sectors, that is education and health, right? So we need to have government interference in education and health sector, right? Because reason being, because education and health are assumed to be of great importance in the formation of human capital. Till now we are focusing on education and health only. So because why? Because we, it is assumed, it is considered that education and health bear a great or carry a great importance in the formation of human capital. Now, to ensure that the benefits, right, the benefits of education and health reach people in the best possible way, it is a must for the government to interfere in the working of these two sectors, right? Just to give the favorable benefits to the consumers of these services, right? Government needs to interfere. Now there are three reasons as such. Later on we will add on more reasons, but at the moment there are three main important reasons because of which government needs to interfere in the working of education and health. The first is that the expenditure on education and health make long term impact and they cannot be easily reversed. This means that the impact when one gets education or takes some health facilities, so these two sectors leave a long lasting impact on a person. Effect of these services is long lasting, and if by chance any mistake is done, then that mistake cannot be easily rectified, right? So that is what we mean by expenditure on education and health make long term impact and they cannot be easily reversed. Now, to explain the same point, let us take an example. Now, we know that, let's take an example that once a child is admitted to one of the schools, or he has been admitted to some healthcare center. Okay. Now, after the child gets admission there, after few months, let's talk about that, after few months it is discovered that the services that institution is providing, these services are not adequate. The health services, the education services these institutions are providing, they are not being provided properly, right? Right, what the people expect, what the parents expect, or what we expect, the services are not according to our expectations, right? So now that we need to take a decision that we need to shift that person or the child from that particular institution or healthcare center to some other institution. That is the decision we all will take in that case. Okay, now when we take this decision, till that time a lot of harm, a lot of amount of harm would have been caused to that particular child or the person, right? Maybe let's say if we talk about the hospitals, right? God forbids if any one of us or anyone known to us is admitted in an hospital, right? And there is, we observe that the cleanliness is not there, or the doctors are not that efficient, the nurses are not looking or taking proper care of the patient, right? Till we observe this thing and then we decide that we will shift the patient to some other hospital or healthcare center, during this time the patient might have developed severe illness, right? A lot of harm would have been caused to that particular patient. So it will be very difficult, right, to rectify or improve upon the mistake. So this is what we mean by expenditure on education and health make long term impact, right? And these impacts will remain with us for maybe throughout the life, right? Whenever if we come across or we talk to other people, we'll say that in that particular hospital the services are not at all good, in that particular institutions the patient is not been taken good care of. So that remains in our mind for throughout, maybe throughout the life or for a longer period of time. And the harm what has been caused to that patient cannot be easily recovered. So for that reason there is a need for the government to interfere in the working of education and health sector. The second reason is that why we want government to keep a check on the working of these sectors, that is education and health, is that the individual consumers of these services do not have full and complete information about the quality of services and their needs, right? This means that whatever information means, if we talk about these services as a consumer, we all don't know in a particular institution or in a particular healthcare center, right? What all services are being, what are the let's say quality of services being provided. And then if we admit our child in a particular school, or if we admit a patient in one of the hospitals, then what will be the expenditure there we are not aware of. So that is another reason why we want, or why there is a need for the government to interfere, right? So every consumer does not have full knowledge, sorry, full knowledge about every institution, right? Like knowledge, basically what type of knowledge we would like to have beforehand, that first what is the quality of service that is being provided in that institution, and secondly what will be the cost that we will have to pay. So these are the two major issues which we need to know before we enter in one of the institutions. So third reason is that providers of education may acquire monopoly power and may get involved in exploitation. So that means the providers, the ones who are providing these, the various institutions who are providing the education at higher level, or maybe who are providing education, let's say in the particular country. So these people may acquire monopoly power, right? Just get back to the chapter of main market forms, which we covered in 11th class. There we studied about monopoly, right? The monopoly basically means what? When there is a single seller of a commodity. So when we have, let's take an example that if we have one of the hospitals, I related with the health sector also. So if we have one of the hospitals which is well equipped with the latest technology, right? Where very big operations are done, and they have all the world class facilities, which we also know by the name of super specialty hospitals, right? So if we just have one or two super specialty hospitals in our city, what will happen? They also know that their number is very less. So these people will acquire monopoly power, right? Now, when there is a monopoly, we know that there are very bright chances that the consumers may be exploited. So the same will happen, right? So just to avoid the exploitation of consumers, there is a need for the government to keep a check. There is a need for the government to keep a check that these organizations are providing quality services to the consumers, and along with that, they are not charging higher price, right? So because of, mainly because of these three reasons, we expect our government to interfere in the working of the health and the education sector. Now in our economy, we will be now, as I've told you earlier also, that in this chapter, out of education and health sectors, I'll be just covering the education sector, and the health sector will be covered in your chapter number 8, that is infrastructure. So there we will be talking about the health sector at length. Right now, here when we are taking education as one of the aspect here, now, in our economy, right, education sector is basically governed or controlled by the Ministry of Education. Now, the Ministry of Education works at two levels. One is the union level and another at the state level, right? So, therefore, the education sector in our country is regulated, controlled by Union Ministry, right, of Education, and Ministries of Education at state level. So this Ministry of Education at union level, and secondly at state level. So Ministry of Education controls the education sector at union level and state level. Now, below this Ministry of Education, we have, below this we have the departments of education, right? So first Ministry of Education, under them two levels, union and state, and then after that we have the departments of education, right? And these departments of education, along with various organization, control or regulate the education sector. Now what are those organizations? Of all those organizations, you are familiar with some of them. Yes, the first is NCERT. I hope you all know the full form of NCERT, because you people are referring to the books as printed or as given by NCERT, right? So the full form of NCERT is National Council of Education, Research and Training, right? So, National Council of Education, Research and Training. Please remember these full forms, right? So, NCRT is working the school level, right? Till 12th class, the books and the curriculum and everything, along with different organizations like CBSE board or international board or whatever. So NCRT plans out the curriculum. Then next we have is UGC, University Grants Commission. Okay, so UGC is University Grants Commission. Now, this is the level which works at college level. This is the organization, sorry, which works at college level. All the, let's say, graduation, post graduation courses, right? So, all these courses are being dealt or they are being covered by UGC, right? So after this, we have AICTE, right? That is All India Council of Technical Education. I repeat, sorry, All India Council of Technical Education. That is now after college, when you go in for some technical courses, software course, or let's say engineering courses and all those things. So all that all that level is being handled by AICTE, right? So education sector controlled by Ministry of Education. Ministry of Education further works at two levels, state level and the union level. Under the Ministry of Education, we have departments of education with various organizations. Now, what are those organizations? NCRT, that is National Council of Education, Research and Training. Then we have UGC, University Grants Commission, college and all that, graduation and post graduation level. And then we have AICTE, that is your All India Council of Technical Education, right? Now, this was all about the education sector. Similarly, this almost the same structure is being followed in the health sector as well. Now, in the health sector, we have Ministry of Health at the union and state level, right? On top is the Ministry of Health, divided into two parts, union at union level and state level. Below this, we have Department of Health and various organizations. Now, Ministry of Health, when I say, right, it also means that family welfare, right? That is the family, all those organizations which are working for the welfare of the families, means providing health, right? So those all organizations will be covered under Ministry of Health, right? So now Department of Health and various organization, and the various organization, one major or the most important we have is the ICMR. ICMR basically means that, or the full form we have is Indian Council for Medical Research. Okay, Indian Council for Medical Research. Now, in our country, right, in our country, we have basic education and healthcare that is being given as a fundamental right to our citizens, right? So in our country, government says that every person should have basic education. Basic education means the person should be able to read and write easily the simple sentences. Okay, so that is what we mean by basic education. And health care facilities is a fundamental right of each and every citizen. Now, to give this fundamental right to our citizens, again, we say that there is a need for the government to control these two sectors, right? Why? Because majority of our population is living below the poverty line. We all know, and we have studied in the chapter of poverty as well, right? We have studied in the chapter of poverty that majority of the population is living below the poverty line, and these people as such, are unable to afford the basic education and health care, right? Because when they are below the poverty line, they are not even able to meet their basic needs, right? And basic needs, if I say, we cover food, cloth, shelter, education, and health, right? So below poverty line means a minimum, whatever standard our government has laid down, these people are not even able to meet those standards, right? So therefore, when majority of the population is poor, so to give the basic fundamental right population, there is a need for government to interfere, right? Moreover, those who are a little bit above the poverty line, right? Like if we talk about lower middle class or the middle class people in some of the cases, so these people are not in a position to afford the cost of super specialty hospitals and the cost of higher education. Means these people cannot afford to send their children for, let's say, the engineering courses, or to send these children abroad for some higher education, or they cannot send one of their known to some super specialty hospital because the cost involved is very high. So that is why now, if you people will just dig into the information, government has provided these facilities free of cost, right, in these super specialty hospitals for the poor people up to some percentage, right? These hospitals conduct free operations for such people who are below the poverty line, right? And they can get themselves treated, but they have to fulfill certain requirements, certain formalities which are being laid down by the government. So this is what I covered, that now government needs to come forward and provide these services free of cost to these people, right? The basic purpose of providing these services free of cost was basically to let achieve 100% literacy rate, right? Both at the union and the state level, right? So that is why government has initiated this step. Now, education sector in India, that is one of the next topic we have. Now, over the years, if we see the data as being laid down by the government, we see that the government is spending a lot of its expenditure on providing education. So there is growth in government expenditure on education, right? Now, the expenditure government incurs on providing education can be measured in two ways, right? The expenditure that is being undertaken by government to give education can be measured in two ways. First, we say as a percentage of total government expenditure. Now, what does this mean? As a percentage of total expenditure, government expenditure. That is, it shows that whatever the total expenditure government is incurring in the economy, maybe on the development of uh, infrastructure, maybe on some various other purposes, right? So whatever the total in expenditure government is incurring, out of that total expenditure, how much percentage is being used for the development of education sector. Like if government is incurring 1000 crores as the total expenditure, right, for, let's say, running the economy. So out of this 1000 crores, what amount of expenditure is being used for providing education by the government is one way of measuring the expenditure that is being undertaken in the education sector. Okay. Now, during the year 1952 to 2014, during this time period, this expenditure increased from 7.9 to 15.7%. So over the years, we can see now, if government is spending more on providing education, this means that, or this shows that education is an important factor for government. Government feels that to give education to people is important, right? So basically, percentage of total government expenditure will let us know how does the government feels about the education sector, means whether it feels that education is on priority or not. If government spends more out of its expenditure, more portion of its expenditure is being used for education, this means that for government it is important, education is important, right? It is on its priority list. Now the second way is to measure it as a percentage of gdp. Gdp means what income we have, right? Percentage of gdp basically means that whatever is the income of the country, right? GDP is what? Income of the country, money value of all the final goods and services. So that is the income for the country. So whatever is the income of the country, out of that income, how much is being spent on education, right? See, if I say that some percentage of GDP is used for education purpose, right? So this means that we are developing our education, that we people are interested in spending on our education. So these are the two ways through which expenditure on education can be measured, right? Now government spends education more on uh, government spends more on elementary education. This means that, first of all, we should know that the education on which government, or the expenditure on which government spends money, can be divided into two parts. One is the elementary education, and second is the higher or tertiary level education. Okay, elementary education basically means the education which is given at school level, right? So elementary education basically means that the education which is given at school level, and major share of government expenditure is being used at elementary level, right? Means let's say to the children up to the age of 14 or 15 years, I think, yeah. So government spends maximum part of its expenditure on providing education to children up to the age of 15, around 15 years, right? Then the share of higher or the tertiary education is the least. So after this, whatever education government is providing, right? Let's say college level, university level, right? If I'm talking about the polytechniques, this all is covered under tertiary education or higher education. After your schooling, college or the polytechniques, right? And the universities also, obviously. So all these three together come, and all these three together will be covered under tertiary education, right? So at this level, the expenditure of the government is very less. Okay, now expenditure on tertiary level is important, right? But this expenditure which has been incurred at tertiary level should not be incurred at the cost of elementary education. Okay, so this means that what government is doing, or as such, if we talk talk about that at tertiary level, the cost of education is very less. So government is spending very less amount of its expenditure on tertiary level, right? But if we calculate the cost or the cost that will be incurred by one student, right, to get tertiary level education, that cost will be higher, right? As per, if we calculate this cost per student, right? Students studying in, let's say, some polytechnic, right? For government, because there are less takers of tertiary education, so government incurs less expenditure. But if we talk at an individual level, for a person who is taking education in some from some polytechnic, for him the cost is pretty high. So that means whatever extra amount we are spending on elementary education should not, that extra expenditure should not be taken away from the expenditure that would have been incurred at tertiary level. So we want to, that is what we want to conclude here, is that education at all levels is important. So accordingly, government should spend its money, should incur expenditure, right? If we open more schools now, to have good teachers in these schools, right, they need to be trained at the at higher educational institutions. And if in colleges and all the other institutions government is not incurring expenditure, so the quality of education will be very poor, right? So therefore we say expenditure on all levels of education is important, right? Now we find the difference in educational opportunities across the states also. That means some states are spending much more money on education sector, whereas some states are not spending much part of their money on education. Okay, so that means if we look state wise, across states also there are differences in providing educational services, right? Those states where much stress is laid upon education, where education is considered as an important factor, there we have good percentage of children, right? Good percentage of children who are getting or who are excelling in various fields like Bangalore, Maharashtra, right? Then Delhi, of course, right? So here more importance is given to education. That is why we see so many children are taking education and the quality of education is also good, right? But in some states where the expenditure incurred by state is very less on providing education, there we don't have very skilled persons or capable persons coming out of the out of the lot. Okay, for example, per capita expenditure on education differs from as high as, per capita expenditure means per person expenditure incurred on education, right? What a single person incurs expenditure on his or her education, it differs from one state to another state. The cost of education we acquire differs from one person in one state to another person in another state. And to prove this, there is an example that per capita expenditure on education differs from one state, that is Himachal Pradesh, it is 34,651 rupees. Means one person who will acquire education in Himachal Pradesh will on an average incur the expenditure of 34,651 rupees. And the same in Bihar will is 4,088 rupees. Just look at the difference. In Bihar, that means the state government is not paying more attention on providing education to people, to the children. right? And that is why we see that most of the people from Bihar migrate or shift to other cities, so as to acquire knowledge, so as to acquire education. That is the basic reason. If you will, after your schooling, when you'll go to colleges, you'll see that the Delhi University is flooded with people coming from Bihar, right? They are very brainy people, but the education, quality of education in Bihar is not at all good. We can see from it, the figures are witness, we have the witness as figures as the witness, right? And that is why people from Bihar are coming to the other cities and other cities or states, so as to take the education, right? So most of your seats, children, are being grabbed by people coming from Bihar. Gear up, right? You gear up for your seat and reserve one for yourself with your hard work. Okay. So with this encouragement to you, please read out all the points I have covered. And if there are any doubts, please get back to me on my mail ID. Stay safe, stay healthy, take